Mr. Tata, congratulations on your award. The award is being sponsored by Lloyds Banking Group. What business opportunities do you believe exist between Britain and India?
Well, I think the opportunities are quite immense, and most people would not believe this. But I think there's tremendous technological and scientific skills in the UK, and this is both in the universities and in small companies, which most people don't know about, but exist, and that can be exploited very well. And partnerships and collaborations between India and the UK could make this happen.
I want to move on slightly to talk about philanthropy. I mean, you're a well-known philanthropic individual, as well as through the Tata Group itself and through the foundation that you run. What do you think businesses could be doing more in terms of their ability to invest in communities in a philanthropic manner?
Well, I speak more from the standpoint of India, where the great disparities in income levels and the quality of life. And we find that inevitably when you create an industry in a semi-rural or rural area, you create an island of prosperity and a sea of, if not abject poverty, a lower quality of life. And it's important that you spread that prosperity in some way or form. And what we have done is we've undertaken to consciously improve the quality of life in a radius of maybe 20, 30 miles around our plant. The villages around in the area of medical benefits, medical treatment, mobile dispensaries, education, sometimes in outdoor schoolrooms under a tree, in terms of creating vocational skills and general education. Nothing sophisticated, but yet considerable. More recently, we have looked at the hardships of certain small communities, perhaps not having drinking water, and tried to train them in water management, water conservation, and converted those communities to prosperous, viable agricultural communities. And that's very rewarding. On an average, we spend about 4% of our profits in these kinds of activities.
The Tata Group is expanding globally and has been expanding globally since the 80s and the 90s. On the philanthropic side, though, do you feel or do you perceive that it's part of the plan for the Tata Group to start investing philanthropically globally as well as locally?
Maybe in other developing countries, yes. I think it would, it seems to me a little pompous for us to say we're going to be philanthropic in developed countries. I think we can bring some of the philosophy into the way we do business, which is, I find, a little more benign and more benevolent than I see in some other countries. But we have in fact invested in foreign universities to provide scholarships for, let's say, Indian students or underprivileged students, given endowment for facilities that would make those colleges better, and invested in a few activities of that kind of nature, but it's been very small.
I want to move on to a little bit about business. Do you have any advice to give to people who are looking to set up in India? There are a lot of British businesses who are looking to, take advantage of some of the growth that is occurring in the Indian economy. What would be the 2 or 3 points of advice that you would suggest to such individuals?
Well, I think, as I said, there are many skills and many capabilities existing in the UK. And one of the key issues would be for these smaller companies, maybe big by Indian standards, but smaller UK companies, to come and understand what the potential of the Indian market is. So the first criteria might be to come to India and get the touch and feel of the size and scale of the market. In most cases, it would surprise people. There's a general feeling that India would not have a demand, the market would be very small. But in the consumer area alone, we talk of a market of 250 million people. And that is Tata's own estimate, is that if you move down a notch on the pyramid, you have a market of 500 to 600 million people that you can address with suitable products. So one criteria is to visit India and try and see where one's technological skills could find a market. The other would be to look at the skill level in India in terms of how a concept or a product could be manufactured more economically to give a larger market to the UK companies. Those are two first moving ideas that I would say would need to be embraced by a British company that's looking at India.
Expanding on that slightly, thinking about then the challenges that you believe if a new business from, let's say, the UK were to come to India, what would you feel would be the most immediate challenges that they would have to face?
I think the biggest challenge is an intangible one of the social shock. Go driving from the airport into town. You know what, and those who visited India know what we mean. You overcome that, and you find your place and your balance, and you forget the environment and look at the business.
Yeah.
And the business opportunities are pretty encouraging.
From a personal perspective, because I have a business in India as well, and one of the things that I find from kind of grassroots level is this feeling of just following the West. There's an immense feeling in amongst the Indian students, the graduates, right up through to the business people, where they will go and proliferate business by taking ideas from the West and taking it locally. If you look at some of the largest organizations, including yourself, some of the other companies who are dominating the Indian market, most of them are westernizing. They're basically westernizing Indian infrastructure. If I look at Silicon Valley, it's easy to say, well, Silicon Valley in the US, is a pioneer in software. What does the shop window of India look like? Where is India pioneering and innovating at a global level so that brand has the ability to proliferate globally?
I think the only area that I can think of readily in answer to the last part of your question is the IT sector, the information technology sector, where I think India may not have pioneered, but it certainly made a name for itself and forged a position for itself, whether you look at the UK, Europe, Latin America, and even some places in Asia. Going back to the earlier part of your question, where you talked about westernizing our product, many Eastern countries have newer and better infrastructure than some of the Western countries. So it would no longer be true to say that people are trying to follow the West. That used to be the case, certainly.
Sure.
And it used to be fashionable, and we ignored, in fact, if you look at India, we ignored looking east. All the years when Japan and Korea and Taiwan and China grew and prospered and put in infrastructure and facilities, which finally exceeded the capabilities of the West. You look at the hospitality business. I think people who travel the world will accept that partly due to the difficulty of jobs, etc., a hotel in Asia provides you better services than a hotel in the West. So I think the days of saying that you need to imitate the West are gone. And today, more and more companies are and should be saying, let's look at the global best and imitate that or emulate that, rather than say, let's look at the best in the UK or the US, etc. And then there are pockets of high technology, in electronics and biotechnology, where there are centers. Maybe Silicon Valley for one, it may be Boston for another, it may be China in a third. And I think centers of excellence now will be what people will emulate.
I get the point about IT totally, and I mean, your own business, some of the other businesses, the Wipros, the Infys, these kind of companies, they've clearly grown by taking the IT model into a low-cost arena and being able to outsource and provide that to the Western companies and locally, clearly. Where's the innovation? This is really what I want to know. I mean, what is going on in India that anybody globally would say, these guys are the best in the world at doing this in terms of true pioneering innovation?
I'm going to give you an answer that sounds a hedgy answer, but it's not. You know, there's innovation which are truly the kind of things that Nobel Prizes are won for. And maybe for a long period of time, India hasn't been in the forefront of that. Then there's innovation which, in varying levels of, decreasing levels, are an issue of adaptation, an issue of clever rearranging, clever solutions. They may be very small. The person who carries food, the tiffin carrier, from the home to each office, that's an innovation that others haven't been able to emulate. Maybe there's no need to emulate it, but it's something that's innovative. But it's not the innovation that deals with human genome or such. So I think in terms of the higher levels of innovation or scientific achievements or engineering breakthroughs, yes, you're right, India has not been the forefront of that. But by virtue of the difficult environment in which we are, we're constantly innovating to survive in maybe many ways that we don't think of. So if we build cars with suspensions to take care of horrible roads. That's innovation.
Brilliant, love it. Love it. Thank you very much.